You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Ask Drone U as we go over this week's drone news with Haya Costello from Drone DJ. Haya, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing?
Hey, Paul. Good morning. Very well. Thank you very much. And as always, a pleasure to be on your show.
Hey, it is always a pleasure to have you. And there is a lot of news this week that kind of builds on the news that we've been going over the last few weeks. So I'm excited as everything is seeming to progress. And that brings us right into this week's first piece of news. And it looks like, Haya, the Phantom 4 has made a comeback even faster than what we predicted. What do you have?
Yeah, exactly. We were talking about the Phantom 4 Pro version 2 coming back online really firstly in October, and then we actually had to update the news and say, hey, it's going to be in September. However, yesterday, the Phantom 4 Advanced all of a sudden popped back up in the DJI online store. And you told me about it. I think you heard it from one of the Drone U members. I wrote an article about it, published that late last night, and within an hour, it was sold out again. And it kind of blows me away. I mean, the only thing I can come up with is that a lot of people need a Phantom 4 drone. And even if it's not the Phantom 4 Pro, but it's the Advanced, which is nearly as good, people just grab them up. And within the hour, they were gone.
Yeah, oftentimes whenever I'm talking with NTSB investigator Bill English, we always say the drone that has the most value dollar for dollar is the Phantom 4 Advanced because it's a Phantom 4 Pro without the rear-facing and side-facing obstacle avoidance. That's pretty much it. So it's got the same sensor and it's got the same gimbal. And frankly, in my eyes, it's a lot more fun to fly. So I think it's a phenomenal tool and it has a lot of value. But it also goes to show Haya the value of the Drone U community giving us that heads up that, hey, wait, they're back in stock right now. So
Totally.
If you didn't get your hands on one, do you think we're going to see them again?
I don't know. I think we might. I mean, I'm not sure what the story is with DJI when it comes to their production capacity. I mean, I suspect a lot of this must be related to that $150 million fraud case that came out, I think it was late last year. That must have had an impact on their production capacity. And I think what we're seeing now is that production stream coming back online. I would be inclined to say that we're probably going to see the DJI Phantom 4 Advanced back in stock as well. And also, we're still counting on the Phantom 4 Pro version 2 to come back in September. So hopefully those drones will be back. Same for the batteries. I know a lot of people want batteries as well for these drones. So yeah, we're thinking they should be back in store.
And just for everyone listening out there, I just checked in with our good friend Sam over at DJI New York City. And at DJINYC.com, they still do have a couple of Phantom 4 Advanced available in stock. So I just want to let everyone know. I know the DJI official store is out, but DJI NYC just got a shipment of Phantom 4 Advanced. So if you're looking for one, you may find one there. But Haya, that also brings us into this next piece of news, which is talking about, we've said that DJI may release a drone this year, but if they release one, it's going to be less than 500 grams, and it may not be, professional or even consumer grade, but it looks like it's been leaked on what we can expect to come. What do you have?
Yeah, this is the DJI Mavic Mini. Everybody will by now probably have seen the photos and even the video that we shared on Drone DJ. It's a smaller version of the DJI Mavic. It's Mavic 2, you would say. I mean, it's the same design, folding legs. It looks very, very small and very light, almost flimsy, I would say. That might be because this is probably just a pre-production model that they use to get some authorizations and some filings done. So we don't expect the final version of this drone to look anywhere near the model we've seen. I think it's going to be a lot more finished and finalized and in better shape overall. However, the whole idea of coming out with a drone that pretty much has all the important features people ask for, so there will be 4K video, something small, light, lightweight, pocketable, and also with a lot less headaches would be major news. I mean, if DJI can keep this drone below 250 grams, which we suspect that they will be able to, for instance, in the US, it would mean that you don't have to register your drone with the FAA. And like you and I found out last week, I mean, if we talk with hobbyist drone pilots and we ask them about things like drone regulations and lands and all that stuff, most people give you this blank stare back because honestly, they don't know what you're talking about. And I can imagine that DJI probably senses this as well. So if they can come out with a drone that involves less regulation, less headaches, I think it's going to be accessible to a lot more people. And in the US, not having to register a drone doesn't mean that you don't have to comply with the drone rules that are out there. I mean, if you fly the drone, you still cannot fly over people, you still cannot fly at night, you still cannot fly anywhere near airports. So those rules are still there. But it's not just about the US, of course. I mean, DJI sells their products globally, and in Europe and in Canada as well. Keeping a drone below 250 grams makes it a lot easier for many people to fly and enjoy these products. So it's going to be tough, I think, to keep a drone at such a low weight. But then again, if anybody can pull it off, I think it will be the DJI.
I couldn't agree more, Haya. And I have to say as well, this whole below 250 grams, I think that there's something more important to be said here. But just to recap what you said, because I want to make sure people understand what you said, because at 250 grams or less, we do not have to register the drone, but it still has to comply with this, I believe it's Section 349 recreational drone piloting rules. And I think that's extremely important to note. But also it's important to note that this 250 gram threshold could actually have a significant factor on the future of drone technology, because drones could provide so much more value. I mean, think of drones as not only just a camera product, but as a means or a tool to replace other products. For example, car crashes happen all the time, and sometimes car crashes have, let's say a vehicle comes over the side of a cliff and we don't exactly know where the car is. Imagine if you had some sort of device that was built into your car that could literally have a small drone, sub 250 grams, shoot out of the back of the car and essentially showcase your location as it's pinging with LED lights to tell the emergency responders where it is. These smaller products, these sub 250 gram products, could actually pave the way for future product development throughout the United States and throughout the world, in my opinion.
Oh, I would agree. I mean, making drones smaller and cheaper and more accessible to a larger audience means that you're going to get more people trying out new things, trying out new ideas, new concepts, and developing new technology. So yeah, you're going to speed up that whole innovation process. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a major component of this story. One thing I wanted to touch upon as well is that I actually reached out to the FAA to get clarification on what it means within the US when you have a drone that weighs less than 250 grams. They say, yeah, you don't have to register it. However, you must still operate the drone within the guidelines of Section 349, as you just mentioned. But also, if you're operating the drone as a Part 107 pilot, you must still register the drone regardless of the weight. So it's not like a carte blanche, like, hey, I got a drone less than 250, I can do whatever I want. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely important to understand that as well. And it's extremely important also, as you said, with sub 250 grams, you really open up the door to other products, and those products having less obstacles to get to market. But in this next piece of drone news, while we're excited about the DJI Mavic Mini or whatever they call it, we are actually, I have to say, this next piece of drone news really boils my blood, Haya. I mean, I can't really showcase enough as a drone pilot how upsetting this is. What's going on?
We're going to England, I imagine, huh? These are plans of climate change activists. They were actually called extremists by many people. These guys in England are planning to shut down Heathrow Airport to basically get attention to climate change and global warming and all that stuff. And even though I think many people will agree that there's probably a lot of work that needs to happen there, shutting down an airport by using drones to fly over airstrips and creating hazardous and dangerous situations is not the way to do it. These guys, Extinction Rebellion, I think they're called, have announced that they're going to start a drone attack on Heathrow. It's called Heathrow Pause. And as of Friday, September 13th, they're planning to fly drones over the airways or airstrips. And Heathrow is one of the largest airports in Europe. Apparently, they get about 220,000 travelers every single day. These actions are supposed to take a week, so potentially this might impact the travel plans of about 1 million people going through that airport. We already know it doesn't take much. I mean, if you look at the Gatwick story, where we still have no proof that a drone was actually involved, I mean, many people got their travel plans disrupted there just because of the idea that there might have been a drone or that there might be a drone. So I think their potential to disrupt air traffic at Heathrow is enormous. Hopefully, with the fact that they announced these actions, it will give the UK government and the police force enough time to prepare and to make sure that this does not happen. I think you and I, well, I don't think, I know you and I spoke about this before the show, and I agree with your statement that if you want to get a message across, but you do so at the expense of people's lives, or at least the danger involved, you cross the line. I don't think this is the way to get any message across. So we're not a fan of these actions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Anytime you're trying to threaten someone's life to get a message across, you've lost myself and the audience as a whole, in my opinion. Also, I mean, we ran that Gatwick story, if you remember, together on the news show. And one of the things that we talked about is how it costs literally over $1 million per hour when planes are being held up to land. And if you're a drone operator in the United Kingdom, please get the message out to everyone considering protesting with drones that this is not the way to go about getting your message out. And I can't stress that enough, because literally one small drone can really cause havoc. And I would just ask you, how would you feel if you were sitting in that plane and a drone just got sucked into the engine? So anyway, put yourself in those people's shoes. I think empathy goes a long way, especially tactical empathy. So anyway, that being said, Haya, let's move on. It looks like, everyone was asking us last week, what does DJI's secret message mean? And I know I, in the shadows, was saying Osmo Mobile 3. But what do you have for us, Haya?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. The world's largest drone maker, who currently almost has no drone in stock in their online store. I think right now you can only get the DJI Mavic 2 Zoom. Even the Pro is not available. They're not making drones, but they're making all these other products. And some of them are great products. There's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of our listeners and readers are really looking to DJI to come out with a drone product rather than a DJI Osmo Mobile 3. Again, DJI is not afraid to cannibalize on their own products. The Osmo Mobile 3 is cheaper, yet again. It's lighter, it's better, it's foldable now, which before it wasn't. There are some downsides to the new Osmo Mobile 3. It's harder, for instance, to stabilize your phone on this gimbal because there's no, like the second version had a backstop, if you will. So once you had the adjustment set up, you could slide your phone in and it would always be positioned in the exact same way, meaning that every time you put your phone in, the gimbal automatically was stabilized. The downside to that was you had no access to your charge ports or your microphone ports on most phones. So you couldn't use it in any semi-professional way. They solved that issue with the third iteration, but at the expense of being able to or not being able to stabilize your phone and your gimbal quickly. So there are a lot of pluses to this new one. There are also some downsides. For instance, the flashlight mode where you keep the gimbal in front of you. Now you have to make this awkward sideways move to get that same kind of shot. I think overall it's a better product. It's a little different. The fact that you can fold it and take it with you makes it a lot easier because it's a lot less clunky and a lot less cumbersome to take with you. So I think it's a great product. I just think that nobody's really looking for DJI to come out with an Osmo Mobile 3. Everybody's waiting for new drones or existing drones available for sale. I think those are the two big things, really.
Wow. Well, I'm sure it's exciting for a lot of bloggers to utilize the Osmo Mobile 3, and I think a lot of Instagrammers will enjoy it as well. But in other news this week, well, it looks like one county sheriff's department has actually received a waiver to fly over people in North Dakota. What's going on here, Haya?
Yeah. Burleigh County Sheriff's Department in North Dakota received a 4-year waiver to fly their drones over people. And this is not so much, of course, because of surveillance purposes. The goal is much more to use drones in crash reconstructions, emergency response, and looking for missing people. The fact that they get a waiver to be able to fly over people is kind of a big deal, because it means that they can use drones more often and in more various situations. So it's a small step in a long way to get a lot more first responders access to drones and to be able to use them not anywhere and anytime they want, but at least in more situations. So I think it's an important piece of news.
It is an extremely important piece of news, but it also looks like they had to utilize a specific equipment, as hopefully I can say the word specific, the Para-Zero parachute system. Do you know what drone they were utilizing the Para-Zero system, and do you know what sort of restrictions they were given on flight over people?
I don't know about the restrictions. I do know that it was a DJI Mavic 2 series, and indeed they used the Para-Zero Safe Air Parachute Recovery System. So yeah.
Awesome. We're hopefully looking forward to doing a comparison between Para-Zero and the Indemnis systems, because I think both offer significant safety additions to drones. But I will say I think it's great that more and more waivers are finally coming out, and hopefully these waivers will be systemizable so that other departments can acquire these waivers as well. Haya, it's really exciting. What's not exciting is the next piece of news in the drone industry, which may actually force DOJ to address the issue of shooting down an aircraft, or the law of CFR, or excuse me, 18 USC 32, I believe, is the actual law. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. Memorizing laws has taken me quite a long time, Haya. So that being said, what do we have here?
Yeah, this is a woman from Louisiana. She mistook an airplane for a drone. She was intoxicated and took out her revolver and shot at the drone. But again, she mistook that for, or she thought it was a drone, but in fact was an airplane trying to exterminate the West Nile virus from mosquitoes in the neighborhood. So the airplane was flying low and flying back and forth. This lady clearly was not thinking straight. She yelled something out like, hey, they're coming back to hunt us, thinking that this drone was chasing her somehow. And again, she got her gun out. She shot at the drone, but in fact, she shot at the airplane. And since the airplane was flying so low, I think there was a real risk of her accidentally hitting the pilot, which of course would have been a real disaster. Luckily, she missed, but nonetheless, she's going to jail. It's a felony for illegal use of weapons or dangerous instruments, which I'm not even sure if that's a strict enough penalty for some serious incident like this. She was released on bail on Wednesday morning on a $500 bond. So far it seems that she gets off pretty easily for something that could have been a lot worse.
Which is funny because, 18 USC 32 says, really blatantly, with anyone with the intent to damage, destroy, or disable such aircraft, sets fire to, damages, destroys, or disables, or places a destructive device, is subject to significant penalties. But it looks like this is a clear case of a differentiation between state and federal enforcement, because a $500 bond, is like the equivalent of, you parking in a handicap spot for too long and they just, put you in jail overnight because they didn't like you. So, I think that this is very interesting. Hopefully, since she thought this lady was involved in another incident of shooting an aircraft. Was she not?
That I'm not aware of.
I don't know. I thought I remember seeing something about that, but don't quote me on that. I will say, hopefully this is something that, again, gets the attention of the federal government, as I think it's important that they kind of set the example and enforce against shooting at aircraft, because this problem is only going to get worse and worse, especially as drone deliveries become more and more prevalent. And it's already a joke online with a bunch of memes about, essentially playing, what is it called? Amazon lottery, I believe, was the meme about shooting a drone down and seeing what package you get. So it brings a whole new meaning to Christmas. Anyway, that being said, I think that this is something that I would really love to see the federal government come down on this lady and say it is not okay to shoot at aircraft, whether they are planes or whether they are drones.
I totally agree. I mean, since we launched Drone DJ, I think there's been 5 or 6 different stories that we reported on when people shot at drones. And we're still waiting for the federal government to actually do something about this and set the example. And so far, luckily, there weren't any real serious incidents. But I think this is probably one of the worst ones where she's not really shooting at a drone at all. She's shooting at a manned airplane with people inside. And if that plane was flying that low, she might have well hit them. So I'm glad that it all worked out okay for those guys, but it's a serious situation for sure.
Yeah, if drone pilots are in Monroe, Louisiana, maybe time to go talk to the local authorities. Anyway, Haya, I really appreciate you coming on the show and giving us this week's drone news. Lots of developments from last week.
Yeah, quite a bit. I'm glad we were able to talk about it, and let's see what news we have for next week, right? I mean, it's probably going to be quite a bit as well.
Ooh, you know what? You bring up a good point, and that is one other piece of news that we forgot to mention was the fact that both you and I had gone to New York City to go meet with the FDNY to talk about what drones they were actually using for their operations, what lessons have they learned, and what do they recommend to other departments. But also in that podcast that was actually released yesterday, well, it's today as we record, but this show will go out on Friday. As we launched that episode, we also announced our new collaboration with FDNY, as Drone U will be putting out a new public safety course for drones meant specifically for firefighters and smaller departments across the country. And we're greatly excited to launch that, and we're excited to really be chosen, and we are honored to work with FDNY.
Yeah, I think it was awesome to be there last week. One of the big takeaways that I had from that day was the fact that the firemen of New York City said that actually the smaller drones, like the Mavic, are in many cases the preferred aircraft because they come in much smaller packages. They are much easier to take with you. They're a lot less expensive. They're a lot less risky. And rather than those big drones like the Matrice series, they had a strong preference for the smaller drones. And I thought that was great to hear.
It was great to hear, but it makes sense because they're, Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual, it provides a thermal image, but it provides dual imagery, right? It's portable. It's easy to travel with. I'm so glad they came out and said that because I think other departments need to hear that. But what I found really interesting, Haya, was the perception problem that they're dealing with. That essentially, if civilians or the public at large sees a police drone, they don't want to help them at all. In fact, sometimes they inhibit their operations, which is a problem in itself. But as soon as they wrapped that drone in red and has FDNY on it, now civilians are like so happy that these drones are helping save lives.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference in perception between the police force and the firemen. I mean, firemen are perceived as heroes, and if they use drones, it must be for a good cause. And I think that that helps them quite a bit. And it's good, I guess, to use that situation to show that how drones can be used for good. I mean, we hear too many stories about drone incidents and people doing crazy stuff with drones. I think it's important to get the good stories out where we show that drones help to save people's lives, to find missing people, to find lost pets. I mean, there's so many different cases where drones actually are beneficial to us. And I think those are the stories we should try to put in the foreground. And I think if you put drones in the hands of the firemen, you're going to get a lot of those stories coming out.
I just think it's beautiful how this technology is being used to save lives. And I think it's beautiful how more and more people are realizing how powerful the technology is.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not a toy, it's a tool. And that's an important message to get across.
That I could not agree more. It's the future DeWalt. I could not agree more. On that bombshell, that's going to do it for this week's show. Again, as I have trouble speaking this morning. But hi, I just want to say thank you again for coming on the show. Also, thank you again for joining us at the FDNY and being a part of that. I look forward to seeing your piece on that. But in addition, happy belated birthday, and glad we got to celebrate your birthday with some big German Spaten beers.
Yeah, that was a fun night. Thank you for that, and thank you for inviting me to that day at the FDNY. I'm looking forward to next week's show, man. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about next week. So thanks for having me, and I'll be back next week with you.
Very excited. We've got some great announcements to give out next week as well. I think you know what I'm talking about. But on that note, that's going to do it for our show today. If you have a question, go to AskDroneU.com. And if you want to subscribe or you want to share the show because you know that this show helps other people learn about the drone industry, please do that. And we're only a few reviews away from hitting a new milestone on Apple Podcasts. So if you'll leave us a review, we would greatly appreciate it. But that's going to do it for us today. Thanks again for watching another episode of Ask Drone U.